everyone. Good evening. If you guys have ever been in a room with me before or ever have attended one of my trainings or presentations or anything, you know that I talk to the audience. So when I say good evening, I really mean good evening. Good evening, everyone. Okay, good. Thank you guys so much for taking your time to be here tonight. We are so grateful and we are so pumped and excited to have this conversation, this very, very important conversation that we wouldn't be able to have without you guys. So thank you for attending tonight. We're just going to open up with some prayers. So if you could just bow your heads. God, we thank you so much for bringing us all here tonight safely, God. We know that nothing happens by coincidence and that you have each and every person in this room tonight for a reason, God. I ask, God, that you just saturate the atmosphere, Father. I ask that you speak, Father, open up our ears to hear you, open up our eyes to see you, be our voice tonight as you bring us together in unity as one to learn and to create change together, Father. I thank you for each and every single person in this room. I ask that you just touch our hearts, open up our hearts to receive what you have for us tonight. I ask, God, for protection for those who are on the way and those who wanted to come but could not make it. Be with them as well, God, as we know that this is the first of many, many conversations. We love you and we thank you. Amen. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and kick it off. And first, I just want you guys to just breathe, deep breath in, deep breath out. Because we know that this conversation is heavy. We know that it's uncomfortable. We know that it's needed. But we want you to know that we are welcoming you with open arms, right? This is just a discussion for all of us to have. So as we go forward with tonight, I want you to know, like the film, what we have to say, we're all doing it. All of this is in love, right? So that we can come up with solutions to help our kids, to help our youth, to help our victims and survivors of trafficking and exploitation. That's the reason why we're here tonight, to come up with solutions with you guys, right? So as we go forward, you'll hear some things in the film that may be a little rough, right? But honestly, I like to say this, and I'm going to say this in love. If you leave here comfortable, then we've missed the mark. Everyone needs to leave here uncomfortable because that's going to motivate change, and that's going to drive you to create impact. So there are some things that you'll hear, all in love. We'll explain it. We'll go through it. And I just want to just tell you just like how this even came to be. So for myself, personally, I've been, thinking about this for a while and wanting to know what I can do. Being a Black woman, being an overcomer myself, it was always on my heart to figure out, man, like, how do I have these conversations? I work with you beautiful, beautiful people every day, and I've just realized that I didn't feel represented, right, in a lot of the conversations, in a lot of the rooms that I was walking into, and so it was on my heart. And then summer 2020 happened, right, with the murders of George Floyd and Ahmaud and the protests that happened. And you know that, and Breonna Taylor, that the climate was like intense. It still is, right? But last summer, it was unbearable. And that sparked something in myself, and a lot of these women will tell you as well. It sparked something in me to like, okay, this really needs to happen. We need to have conversations because I can't show up for work and pretend like I'm not affected. So how am I going to use all of this stuff that I have in me for change? Like, how am I going to bring it to my work? How am I going to bring it to better serve the population that we serve? Like, how is that going to happen, right? And so we just were like on a search for some outlets. And we ended up in a group, right? What was the name of that group, Kim? Lead to Love, or Lead with Love. I don't even remember the name of the group. And so it was a group that was specifically for leaders of color in the anti-trafficking movement, which is like, oh my gosh, yes, I need that because I don't know how to talk to these people that I love so much, that I work with every day, but I have these things in my heart that is not right, so I know that I need to get this out. And so ended up on the group, and Shawnee was there, Kim was there, and then I had no idea that we were going to see Tamika. Tamika was there. And so, like, what did you guys think about that group? What did it do for you guys?
Thank you so much, Kathy, and awesome to be here tonight. I'm Tamika Walker. I'm the CEO of United Against Human Trafficking. It's such a blessing to be here, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to kind of speak to you guys and speak my heart tonight. That's what I'm planning to do, and I just ask that from my heart to yours that you allow me to be in a space to be able to do that safely and comfortably. So thank you very much. But yeah, that group was very intense. It was a group of folks who came together to really, in the anti-human trafficking movement, so it was specific to the anti-human trafficking movement, and we would come together and just talk about how we were feeling after the tragedies that happened in 2020 and what that really meant, and particularly after George Floyd, when all the protests were going on, and how do we show up, as Kathy was saying, and show up in a space where we can still be leading with love, but at the same time not denying the pain and some of the experiences we were having as African American women walking through the world today. And so all of that was just very heightened, and there was a lot of emotion, a lot of tears, and this was women all across the country, not just here in Texas. And so you had different perspectives beyond just what was happening in Houston, all over the different states. So that was really cool to see for me, because I was able to relate to other folks' experiences in other parts of the country and understand that I wasn't the only one that was experiencing this, and how do I walk through this in a way that could be healthy and also elevate my community and also support and honor the folks that I was serving every day in the anti-human trafficking movement. So for me, it was a safe place to do that and to be just brutally honest about where I was and the impact that George Floyd's death had on me, my family, my brothers, my mom, the people that I love. So that was the kind of initial expectation that I had to get out of that experience, was to be able to be safe and free, to be able to talk openly about my feelings. So I don't know, if Kim, if you or anyone else wants to take it from there, what they were feeling during that time?
Absolutely. So to your point, I kind of felt the same way, that it was a space where I could be heard. I was starting to question for myself, is this me? And do I have the problem, right? Because surely I had heard no one else voice these concerns. So I'm questioning everything that I'm feeling. So it's questioning how I deliver and how I perform in my work environment. And so to see the other young ladies on the call, and there were some young men on that call too, but to see them and voicing the same thing that I was feeling was so liberating, one, because it gave me a chance to feel free to be able to discuss it, and then two, empowered to continue the conversation over a period of time and not to just stop right where we were. So I was just so grateful to see familiar faces, and that there were other voices and narratives that sounded similar to mine, to help me process what I was going through. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that it is really, I'm really tickled to be up here, with all of you guys after, it was a hard year for a lot of us, and it was really emotional. And not only were we checking on each other personally, how are your kids, how are your family, but then also, let's process this. We've got work to do. We've got people who are being impacted, and that we're charged to serve, right, and to serve well. And so it was a really great experience, and to see kind of this event happen due to that group. And it was ongoing after that group. Some of us were in Bible study together, and we began praying together, and just really being a support to one another as we were trying to navigate, one, how this impacts us personally, and being very real about that and vulnerable. This does impact us, me as a person of color. But then just understanding how can we make meaningful change in the work that we're doing. And so it's really exciting to be here and see how this kind of panned out.
Yeah, we're really excited, as you can tell. And so that's what this is. This is a continued discussion, and now all of you get to be a part of that, right? We just want to invite you to the table, invite you to our space, our room, and so that we can continue to figure out solutions, because we know that we can't do it alone, right? None of us can do it alone. We need you, you need us, we need each other, and so that's what tonight is about. So before we go forward with the film, I definitely want to, if we can just all honor the lives that were lost in Atlanta. Oh my goodness. Talk about heavy, right? If we can just take a moment of silence for those 8 precious people let's just honor them really quickly. And let's just, tonight and going forward, man, our world is just so turned upside down. This is not what we're here for tonight, so I'm not even going to go on that rant, but let's just keep their families in prayer. Let's keep lifting up victims and survivors of trafficking as we go forward and leave here tonight. So next we are going to have Charles, Red Lion, spoken word, and he's going to open us up, and then we'll go into a film.
So, I met this woman a few years ago. She was a sex traffic survivor, and at the time, she had just escaped from a trafficker with her newborn baby. We sat and we talked for a little bit, and I had so many questions, but the main thing I really wanted to know is, why didn't anyone help you? How could you be around so many people and yet none of them even have the heart to speak up for you? And she said that it was too loud even when she tried to speak for herself. She said that everyone could see that she needed help, but they turned their ears toward the white noise and static to keep themselves distracted. They preferred the sound of commotion and racket. They didn't want to hear her broken heart bleeding screams into their numbness, because then it would confirm what they already knew. And then they would have to face the truth that they've been trying to conceal behind all that noise. Does the silence make you uncomfortable? The way you can hear your heart hold its breath between pulses? The way your lungs flatline between the exhales in these moments? It's hard to tell the difference between peace and death. They both sound like a choir of stillness, like an orchestra of uncertainty. In this world, talk is cheap, but silence is gluttony, and I bet the secrets in your throat make you choke. How strong your tongue gotta be for you to weld your lips shut, trying to suffocate honesty, trying to keep truth in check. I bet you wish the silence didn't make your mind see so clearly. I imagine your imagination makes you feel everything, makes you taste the dreams, hear the screams, and no matter how loud you turn the music up in those headphones, no matter how many songs the DJ spins, eventually all the scratch, clap, boom, and bass will cease, and nothing will be able to hide behind the noise anymore. I wonder, how many secrets can you hear when the music stops? When the club closes and the back alley turns to an altar, and we all know something is about to be sacrificed tonight. Someone's hope is about to be slaughtered. Someone's innocence is about to bleed and burn, because lust will turn passion, perverse, paralyzed power inside of hurt bodies, crashing together like waves breaking ships in two, voices muffled underneath an ocean of flesh. Someone is drowning tonight, but they're not allowed to cry while sinking, so their hearts be a broken levee. Can anyone see that their insides are flooding, that when they walk they carry the weight of every hand that is pressed, choked, and thrown the identity from their bones, like children throwing toys while throwing tantrums? They are no one's plaything, but they've had to learn how to hold rage that doesn't even belong to them. So when you see them, know that they are a product of a man's wrath and twisted fantasy, that they have been made to feel like strangers in their own skin, that there's not much difference between the gun and their skin. And if you listen closely, you can hear them praying for light, begging to be made alive. So when she asked me to hold her daughter, I believe what I held was the heartbeat hidden behind the noise. What I held was the remnant of a joy, this baby girl, this smiling soul who doesn't yet know how many times the world will try to rip that toothless grin from her face. This baby girl who loves unconditionally but can't even articulate why she does. I realized in that moment that I'm probably the first man who's ever held this child like a treasure. So I lifted her to the sky, because that's what you do with prayers. You give them to the air, let them dance and unravel into something beautiful. You give them to God, because eventually your hands become too weak to keep them there. I halfway smiled, halfway cried, because I knew she'd be great, but I knew the adversity she faced. I prayed that she'd never have to run her mother's race, but I knew the question she'd raise. There will be days where she will wake and wonder where her father is. She'll wonder why he doesn't come to the gatherings or graduations, why she's never seen his face. heard his voice. She'll cry on daddy-daughter dance days, wondering why she can't be loved the same way. And then she'll question if she's as valuable as everybody says. But one day, when she's old enough, her mother will tell her about the back alleys, about the voice that lived on her tongue but did not belong to her, about the truth that everyone held hostage while she suffered in silence. She will tell her daughter that her father could be any number of corroded men who found a way to rust and chip away at her soul. She will tell her daughter that none of them have the metal to love her or cherish her like the treasure that she is. She will tell her daughter about the other women who prayed for light but couldn't quite find it before they became casualty in those back alleys. Then last, she'll lift her daughter into the sky, look her in the eye and say, if it had not been for this prayer, dancing in the air, I may never have looked up to see the sun, daughter, the day you were born. You saved my life, became my light. Your eyes are shimmering stars. Your smile, a gentle cloud. Your heartbeat be a booming thunder. Your love, a lightning bolt cutting through darkness. Daughter, you are proof that the skies are the limit. You remind me to look up every day.
I just want to start by saying thank you, ladies, for inviting me into this conversation with you. Thank you for inviting us into this conversation with you, because it is so important. And I'm excited to dive into more about this film, more about your experiences tonight, and learn from you and learn from each other. So I want to start by giving honor to the writer and director of this film, Shantina Vernon, who made it. She just did an incredible job, and we want to honor her. And we want to start by, she saw the importance of this conversation, and I'm sure that's what sparked this film. And so I want to hear from you all, why do you see this as an important conversation to talk about race, ethnicity, and culture as we are talking about commercially sexually exploited youth and victims of human trafficking? Why is this an important conversation to have? Shawnee, give us your perspective.
Yeah, it is. I'm trying to calm down from watching the film again, and we've watched it a couple of times already, and it is heavy. I was actually talking with Red Lion earlier, before maybe a couple weeks ago, and I was telling him that I was getting nervous. More people were showing up, and then he's like, "No, you're not nervous. This is a heavy topic, and this is an important topic that we have to talk about." So I just want to frame that, that's so poignant, that it is a heavy topic and we need to talk about it. But the importance and why, I'm not sure if I couldn't see the words on this screen, but I mean, report after report and study after study just shows us that people of color are impacted at greater rates by trafficking and by commercial sexual exploitation. And when you hear something like that, and when you see this screening, we can't go back to business as usual, right? We have to think critically about, one, why? Why is that the case? We can't just continue with the status quo. We have to really, think critically about the issue. So I think, one, it's really important so we can understand what's the problem. Why are there these disparities? What is making communities of color more vulnerable to being trafficked? In the anti-trafficking movement, a lot of us do presentations and we do trainings and we do awareness events, raising awareness about trafficking to at-risk communities, to churches, to anyone who will hear us. But when we think about prevention work, it's not just telling vulnerable communities about how not to be trafficked, right? We have to look at this from a public health kind of standpoint, and what is making people vulnerable in the first place. Oftentimes it's not that they don't know about it, but there are vulnerabilities that are there to be exploited, right? And so when communities of color are being exploited at greater rates, we really have to look into that. I think, too, it also impacts the way that we do service provision, right? So not only how we understand trafficking and how we understand these disparities, but this should impact the way that we serve. This should impact our programming. It should impact the way we view this issue. So those are a couple of the reasons why I think it's really important that we bring light to this issue and we talk about it.
That's good. Kim, do you have anything to add?
Sure. Especially from my standpoint, I work in healthcare. And so we already know that there are several health inequities across the whole continuum of care, but specifically for people of color and African Americans who are at risk because of those vulnerabilities. And sometimes when they come into our healthcare systems, this is the only place they know to go to reach out for care and help. And so as I watched this film from that lens, from a public health view, and from a nonprofit standpoint, and ultimately from a mission standpoint, if any of the individuals in the film came to my healthcare institution, would they feel cared for? Would they be accepted? And will the healthcare providers realize at that point in time that the individual, the victim, was risking their life to come into the system to reach out for help? And I don't know if we have always thought of it that way, to be honest. And then also recognizing that there were people of color and there were already inequities. The reason that is so important is to realize that all people need care, and all people need to be treated with compassion. And those vulnerabilities are, greater in communities of color where there's a lack, and already vulnerabilities, as Shani said. So realizing that, and when you're providing care, understanding how important it is to go that extra mile to make sure that you're taking care of the patient in the best possible way. Thank you.
Cam, thanks for sharing. I loved how you were talking about when you were watching this film, like those were the things you were thinking about, right? Tamika, what were you thinking about when you watched this film for the first time, for the second time, for the whatever sixth time it was tonight? What were you thinking about personally, professionally, within the community about when you watched this film?
Yeah, for me as a social worker, in full transparency, when I watched it the first time, my mind went back to growing up in a very impoverished neighborhood and experiencing things and seeing things that you didn't understand as a child, and now as a grown woman understanding and being able to kind of see it through the lens of as a kid, like what was that looking like? So I could really identify with the women in the film because I saw myself and the vulnerabilities that I experienced growing up. And so I was in a place of gratitude and thankfulness, even tonight, about what could have happened if different decisions were made. Or I grew up in a single parent household. My mother did the best she could to raise me and my two brothers. And we struggled. And so for me, it was kind of that dichotomy of understanding it from a personal perspective, but also as I do the work in the anti-human trafficking movement, and how do I maneuver through all of those layers and still, show up every day doing the best that I can to serve the survivors of human trafficking. So for me, it just really hit home, even again tonight, particularly when Red Lion was really sharing and being so descriptive in the way he talked about those feelings in the mother. And I thought about my mom, so for me, it just really hit home on so many personal levels and so many different layers, and having to really try to honor how we do the work, okay? And continuing to elevate the conversation from a place of compassion and love and grace, the fruits of the Spirit, because I truly believe that's how we heal, is by coming to it from that perspective. So for me, it was just a very personal experience, so thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Kathy, what about you when you were watching this film?
Yeah, for me, I would definitely echo that. It was very personal. I had to watch it a few times. The first time, it was just like, this is my life. Like, this is crazy. And specifically from the way that they were being treated, right? The silencing of their voices from people that were there to protect them. I had to watch that a few times to come to and say, okay, these are not the people that I work with, surely, right? This is a film But then bringing back those reminders of how I felt, unseen, unheard, unheard of, judged, labeled. And then, I think what was most impactful for me is the end where they all came together to a safe place where they felt like they can be themselves. They could just be, right? I think that was what was most impactful for me, and I can definitely relate to that because there have been times where I only felt comfortable around a certain group of folks because I didn't feel like anyone else would truly understand who I was and what I was going through. And this is not long ago. I'm literally talking about recent times, right? Even in the work that I'm doing today. So it was very personal for me.
Johnny, but what about your experience?
Yeah. I think I agree. It was something that, one, we had to watch multiple times to prepare for. I think there's a lot, I think every time you watch it, you see something different. But the element of us not being able to see too. So Kathy mentioned from the perspective of maybe not feeling seen, the girls in the video, and the experience of the people that we serve too, not being seen. But we can't fix a problem that we can't see, right? And so we need to be able to see that. I mean, it's like a sense of urgency, like, man, could someone see what's going on with this girl? And I think about the one who is, getting discharged from detention, and how they were talking about her. And I mean, I'm sure in detention, maybe she caused some problems. It sounds like she ripped somebody's fingernail off and but what is that? Why? What is going on with this kid? And then we see her going into the home, and it looks like there was some sexual abuse going on in the home. So us, addressing a problem and not having clear vision, I think was something that I'm like, I need vision. I need to see, what is really going on here. Too, we think about the last girl, like it looked like she was just misbehaving in school, and she had the words to say, so that was good, but oftentimes the people we're serving don't have the words to say. The kids that we're working with, they don't have words, and we need to see what's going on. So I think there was just a sense of urgency, like we've got to figure out a solution for this. We need to equip ourselves and really be prayerful about how we need to move about serving this community.
As you were speaking about really seeing the issue, seeing the problem, and trying to understand it as much as we can, it makes me think about, how victims of color even get into trafficking in the first place. How are they even exploited? And so, what is your understanding, your perspectives about how that even happens and what that looks like? Because obviously that's different than my perspective. So, Kim, what is your understanding on that issue and how victims of color enter?
As we talked about earlier, just the vulnerabilities. And I think our culture really wants to gloss over a lot of things that have happened over a long time, right? That's all in the past. That was a past experience that happened then. Everybody should put on their boots and get their bootstraps and work real hard and study real hard, and you can be successful because that's the American dream. But there's so many people that don't even have boots, guys. There's so many people who don't have access to what you and I have access to, right? So us in this room being able to talk with one another is really a luxury, to be honest, to be able to vocalize what's going on, to share how we feel, to feel comfortable in our clothing, and I hate to bring this up, but with coming from a safe place, you got fully dressed to make it here, probably drove in your own car in safety. On your ride, you got to listen to a little music, calm your nerves, made everything pleasant for yourself on your commute here. But for a lot of people, that is not the case. They may have had to take 2 or 3 bus rides just to get to your clinic or your hospital or your service. had to sit by someone they did not know that may have approached them or tried to make them feel uncomfortable. They may be worried about where they're going to sleep tonight, so they can't just turn on the radio and feel comfortable. So that's just on the psychological, mental health awareness, how we make ourselves so comfortable, but someone else doesn't even have that opportunity, right? And then think about if the doctor appointment doesn't go well for you and it was a bad day and you didn't get the numbers, you could read your prescription and you could go to the pharmacist and right away pick up whatever you needed, right? And it was just a car drive down the road, and let's say they accidentally sent it to the wrong pharmacy. You could just call over and say send it to the next one. It's just a simple call, right? Because you have a cell phone. You also probably have email. You could log on to your MyChart and get that all squared out, right? So just simple things that you and I can deal with very easily with the touch of our phone or the touch of our computer, because we have Wi-Fi at home readily available that we pay every month. So just stop for one moment and let's just strip some of those things away. You don't have Wi-Fi. So we felt that real clear with the freeze, right? How difficult was it to log on to work? Very. No electricity. I don't have electricity if I'm in a vulnerable population in some cases because I can't pay the bill. So now you have no Wi-Fi and you have no electricity. All of us here in Texas know what that feels like because we felt it really quick, how everything was shut down. And we were uncomfortable for most of us, 2 or 3 days at the max. And I know for me, I was hot. So when my center point bill came, I wanted to call them right away and tell them something. But can you imagine that being your experience every day? So think about no one. I told them on the call the other night, I said, nobody's coming to visit your clinic or your healthcare facility or your organization, nonprofit, saying, may I have a cup of tea? I need a cup of tea so I can come. No one is coming because all of those stressors have come up to that point. So in some places of people of vulnerability, and they're not all people of color, but for this majority of people of color, African Americans who experience those vulnerability, those are just the simple things that we're talking about that would delay or hinder them receiving services.
That's good. Kathy, tell me more. Speak more to that.
I think Kim covered it all. Next question.
All right, we're moving on. Wrap it up, all right?
I would literally say the same thing, honestly.
Okay, well then I'm gonna come back to you, Kathy. You are an artist. You've written a book, you've written plays, maybe a screenplay coming out one day. Oh yeah, that's right. So, when you watch this film from the lens of an artist, what do you see? What do you see? You talked a little bit about the silence and the voices, but what do you see also, added to that of the role of art in healing and the role of art in social change and in this conversation?
Yeah, for many people, including myself, art expression is language. It's your voice. When words fail you, that you go to art, right? And art is a free form. You can express yourself. You can mold, you can mold your identity to how you see it in art. When you're sitting in front of a caseworker and they're asking you questions and, well, where are you from and how do you feel? You may not be able to express that in words, but I guarantee you, however your expression is in art, you can tell them your whole life story. If you just listen and if you just look like the young lady that sang, right? Like any of us, I'm not a singer, I'm not a singer. But I've heard beautiful singers, like I love Beyonce, right? 28 Grammys. But she doesn't sound like Beyonce. But she sounds beautiful because I heard it, right? I heard her story through her art. The same thing with like Red Lion. He's like my favorite, right? And that's for myself, that was my form of healing too. I didn't know how to express in words what I was feeling, so I turned to my journal. And when you talked about like the book and the play and all of that was just a part of my healing journey because it was uncomfortable for me, quite honestly, to sit here and get questioned about, so what was it like? Hey, let me write you a poem real quick and then you take what you want out of that, or let me just write a play, because art is also, it helps you cope with those traumas, right? It helps you manage those traumas. And it's just a coping skill that is beautiful, and it's also so deeply embedded in culture. I think that's what we need to understand too from a service provider lens. Like it's so embedded in culture that we have to allow people to express themselves how they express themselves. No, they may not answer everything on your assessment, but I guarantee you if you give them a pen and paper, if you give them a canvas, if you give them a microphone, they will tell you and they will share with you where they are coming from, what their perspective is, because literally their history, their identity is in that art. So I'm a huge fan of art expression, art therapy, art healing, art whatever you want to call it. I am a huge fan of it because I know that personally it worked for me, and I've seen it work for so many other people too.
That's really neat. Thinking about your answer, I want to know, like, okay, how do we do that now? Like, as service providers, as organizations, as a community, how do we support, youth and survivors and overcomers in taking from their narratives, from their experiences, and using that to speak out, to express themselves? Tamika, what do you say to that?
I think a lot of, I have no art skills. I did play the trumpet for many years, but does that count? Yeah, you did too? Oh, okay, good. So I guess that counts.
Need a band.
That's somebody, we'll talk about that, yeah. So, but it brought a lot of joy when I was a kid playing the trumpet back in the day. But no, I think a lot of times, finding very creative ways, like a big part of what we do at our organization is one of our values is creativity. And folks can express that in all kinds of ways. And so how we incorporate that in the programming that we, provide is also just asking folks, how do you want to engage in the work, instead of making assumptions about how we think they want to engage in the work. I see us as travel companions with our clients as they're walking down their road. We're no better than them. We could have easily been in the same situation, particularly as African American women. We know that we have maybe experienced some of those same vulnerabilities, but I think the biggest piece is, meeting some people where they are. As a social worker, we talk about that all the time, like truly meeting them where they are. But creativity, particularly in the world that we live in today with technology and, YouTube and the TikTok and all the things that ways that people express. I don't even understand half of it, but I love that it's there for people to have a free forum to talk through, what that really looks like in a safe way. But I also think that as creative folks, understanding, as you were saying, Kathy, that there's a way, I can't maybe talk to you about it, but I can write it, and just honoring that. But I think the biggest thing is just asking folks and what they want out of this experience beyond just telling their story. And we've talked about that over and over again in the movement about why do we continue to ask survivors to tell their story over and over again, understanding that is re-traumatizing them so often, and how do we honor that in the work that we do. So, I just think asking folks what the best way to go about that in their journey and walking alongside with them. Yes.
That's good. So in this film, we saw a lot of different pieces coming together, right? And we hear the word intersectionality. We throw that word around. We've probably been to presentations about that word a lot in this movement. But let's dive into that a little bit in regards to this film. Shawnee, when you watch this film, how do you see intersectionality portrayed? And then how does that relate to your work and your experience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when I think of intersectionality, I just think of, one, just different, we all have different social identities. We're all up here right now as Black women, right? So not only am I Black, but I'm also, a woman, right? So being Black has a set of challenges, as we've seen historically, from chattel slavery to Jim Crow to, modern civil rights movement, all of that. And then also being a woman too, women have also experienced a lot, right? Where less access to, political power and, we've got the gender wage gap that we're talking about now and all of these things. And so not only do I, experience the world from the lens of a Black person, but then also as a woman, right? So then I'm adding these things and all of these, disparities and potential disadvantages on top of one another. So that's what I think about, kind of like compound interest, right? It's always something else added into the mix, and you think you can, escape, and you can't. But when we're thinking about our clients, not all of them are people of color, of course, like we said, but maybe they're a part of a group, a racial group that is experiencing a level of oppression, or maybe they're gender, or maybe they're part of the LGBTQ community, or maybe, their immigration status has, its set of challenges as well. So all of these things on top of each other, and those of us who are in the field know when these, we're working with these clients, it is a lot to unpack, right? And so that's what I think about. And, earlier you were asking about, how do people get into the life? So that's, I think about this, right? All of these vulnerabilities on top of each other, but then it's also the same things that prevent people from getting out, right? Like if I had, food insecurity before, I likely am food insecure when I leave, right? Or if I don't have, as much access to, equitable housing and education, that's gonna still be there when I leave, or when I try to leave. And it's even more of a reason why people stay in the life. So oftentimes people are wondering, well, why are they leaving? Why are they not leaving? But there's a lot going on with these, with the people that we're working with. And so that's kind of what I think about when I think about intersectionality, just oppression on top of oppression and disparity on top of disparity, and how, when you're in these different social groups, how do you navigate the world, and how do you experience the world?
It's really good. And, one of the, I guess, layers or pieces of intersectionality that we saw in this film with that third girl, I believe it was the third girl, right, was transgendered youth, non-gender conforming people. And so, Tamika, how can we take that into our perspectives and into our understandings? How can we help tailor and better our services as organizations to meet the needs and foster better support for those communities as they are intersecting with all these other, intersectionalities that we're seeing in the topic?
Yeah. And that's such an important question. And when I was watching it today, my heart went out to her again because of just how she was being treated by the school system and how it was, who she was not okay and being used and weaponized against her. And I think so often beyond, just the things that we experience as lives of people of color, not necessarily having people meet you where you are and how you identify. And so when I talk to folks at work and in my personal life about, understanding what it means to be transgendered and how we honor folks who, and how they identify, it's not important that you understand. And that's what people have to get right. It's not for you to understand, it's for you to honor. Because at the end of the day, it's not for somebody to understand who I am as an African-American woman. It's for you to honor it and respect it and acknowledge it and to be real when it comes to that. And I think that's what people get lost. We can do that? Can we do that here? I'm just saying.
We can get that?
We can do it.
That's good.
But I mean that. So I get very tender around this because I see the up and coming youth who are very expressive about who they are and how they identify. I had a young lady teach me, and I do it to this day on my Zoom calls. I put she and her. And if it's not on my Zoom call right next to my name, I will do it right in the middle of the meeting. And it's my way of honoring folks who may identify different than I identify. And so it's been a long road because when you're from a different generation, I'm 45. I'm not making I'm 45, okay? And I say that because people think I'm younger than I am. I'm like, no, I'm grown. And so, but with that being said, I've grown, okay? So with that being said, I stay in connection with young folks and I talk with them because they teach me and I want to understand. But beyond understanding, I want to honor them. So I think the third girl, I had so much empathy because although I could identify with the other two young ladies, that was a lesson for me once again, and to reemphasize the importance in our programming to honor people. When we provide housing, we provide services. If they identify as transgendered woman, because we know the death rates are significant in the African American community with transgender women. They're being killed left and right, okay? Just Google it. It's unprecedented, it's unbelievable, and nobody is doing anything about it. And the heart of that is because people want to understand. And my challenge is tonight, it's not for you to understand. Just honor it, accept it, acknowledge it, and love them and meet them where they are, because they need it so desperately for so many reasons that we've talked about tonight. So
I'm gonna take that one home.
Take it,
That is good. Oh, thank you.
I'll add on to that. When you talk about and how that translates for people of color, not dishonoring the young lady's story, but the same issue that the transgender female had in the film of why can't you change, because they're all having a problem. So why couldn't anybody change to identify with that individual? So sometimes as people of color, why can't you talk a different way so that I can help serve you? If you change and fit into my world and look and act like me, that'll help me serve you better. And is that really what we're about? I only serve you if you are like me, look like me, talk like me, walk like me, wear the same clothes as I do. I hope not. I hope that's not where we are. So it's a challenge for all of us to think about, and I think that was a point for me also in the film, was that am I asking, even as a person of color, an African American female, am I asking someone to change their ways so that I can serve them? And that's a reminder to me in being a service provider.
That's a great check. That's a good self-check. All right, last question for the night. We're already there. Time has flown by. As anti-trafficking professionals, why are you concerned about the justice system, concerned about school to prison pipeline that was touched on in the film, concerned about other systems, foster care, as we're in the anti-trafficking field, like why are you guys concerned about those things, and how do they relate together? Kathy, will you kick us off with this one?
Yeah, Shawnee talked about intersectionality, right? And without paying attention to those specific vulnerabilities, we are doing a disservice to the people that we serve. We have to. It's almost like it's the same thing, that I tell people, you can't ignore that someone is Black entering into your program, right? Because we have this thing about like, okay, yeah, we help victims of trafficking, we help survivors of trafficking, great, but that's just one piece of their trauma. So we have to go a little bit further and say, oh wait, no, you're a person of color, you're a Black survivor of trafficking, right? Like we need to address that and get to that root cause too. So I think with ignoring we have to talk about the school to prison pipeline, we have to talk about the foster care system, we have to talk about all of these things that leave our youth vulnerable and adults vulnerable to stay in that system, that toxic system that they're caught up in, right? How are we going to create change if we're not dismantling the things that they've been going through, the systems that have been trying to hold them down for so long? We have to address that. When we talk about like historical trauma and traumas that have been passed down from generation to generation, and then you get someone in your program and it's like, okay, we're just going to address trafficking without addressing like the traumas, the many, many layers of traumas that this person has. We have to start there, or else you're not doing them any justice, right? And so it's an easy way out to say, hey, and I know I want to honor the anti-trafficking community. I love it. I think that we've grown and we've come so far, right? But it's almost easier just to say, okay, I'm trauma-informed, so I can deal with this. I'm trauma-informed about sex trafficking and commercial exploitation, so I can deal with that. But I'm not trauma-informed. I'm not really educated on post-traumatic slave syndrome, right? I'm not educated on historical trauma. I'm not educated on like all of these things, like systemic oppression and stuff like that. I'm not educated on that. So let me just address what I know from going to these trainings, which is sex trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation. Like, let me just do that piece, and then maybe, hopefully, they make it out of our program, and then God be with them. That's doing a disservice. We have to address every piece, so we can't be lazy. Gotta talk about it all, and we have to come up with solutions for it all.
That's good. Does anyone have anything else to add to that? I
I think
think
she was dropping the mic on that one.
I was going to say, about a mic drop. Shauna, you have anything you want to add?
No, I think she covered most of it. I think, oftentimes in the anti-trafficking movement, we might hear people say, you need to stay in your lane. Like, you're an anti-trafficking agency, you need to stay in your lane, but that is our lane, right? Because these people are not just trafficking victims, right? They're a whole person. They're a whole person. We talk about holistic care, right? And so if I want to consider holistic care, I need to be concerned about all of these other, systems that they are, engaging with and interfacing with, and justice issues are connected. Justice issues are connected, and I think that's the important thing that we should take away is criminal justice system that definitely impacts, the clients that we serve, and we see disparities in the foster care system. We are seeing disparities and inequity in the education system and the medical, system. So we have to really address that, and they are connected. And I think just kind of laying that foundation out there and getting comfortable with the fact that the people that are coming in, they're a whole person. We have to deal with all of these things.
Yeah, and I'm gonna name drop like I know this person because I always do because I love his work. His name is Dr. Sean Ginwright. You guys, I don't know who, have you heard of him? He's awesome. So he coined, he's working, he did some research and he's working on moving from trauma-informed to healing-centered, right? Healing-centered is still trauma-informed, however, it includes not just, instead, trauma-informed is really just focusing on that trauma and the individual. That's what we've been taught. Healing-centered now moves from that to focusing on trauma as a collective, meaning what environment did you come from? What is your culture? Like, what is your whole person? Like, we need to address that so that we can address trauma, right? So I would encourage everyone just to start researching that in your programs, do whatever you need to do. Dr. Sean Ginwright, healing-centered approach. So moving from trauma-informed to healing-centered, which is, I think, is needed.
Stay tuned. We'll have him actually here for a presentation, a training pretty much coming up next year. Put it on your calendar. Kathy's going to make that happen.
Yeah. That's my friend. He doesn't know it.
I was going to say something, but I think you covered it. I would say from a healthcare standpoint, to your point of trying to take care of the whole entire individual, when we started educating staff members at the hospital about human trafficking, we wanted them to identify trafficking victims, and we were so excited, right? Because that was just one point, education and identification. We didn't know what to do next, right? So we were just discharging them. We were trauma-informed, we were educated, and we were checking the box. But guess where we discharged them to? Right back to the hands of the trafficker. So was any holistic healing happening? Absolutely not. It just became a revolving door. So when you think about that approach, a healing, to look at how we can actually walk alongside to recovery, it was looking at the approach just outside of our system to make sure that there were systems in place and we have relationships with organizations like the Landing, like United Against the Human Trafficking, like the mayor's office, to make sure that when we discharged, they were discharged to safe housing. And when they got to housing, if they needed a follow-up appointment, you know how sometimes we just assumed that we could just drive to our follow-up. We just wanted to make sure that they had the extra support. So thank you for bringing that up, and I hope that we get him here.
Yeah, he's my friend. He doesn't know it yet, though.
Okay.
So
You will be.
I have a question before we wrap up. For Hillary, you have been journeying with us. You have been in the conversations and just listening to us just talk this through, walking with us. How has that journey of learning been for you as it relates to race and cultural competence and this journey that we're on?
First off, just thank you for asking that question, honestly, and making me stop and think about it. When you told me you were going to ask me this question, I was like, ooh, okay. Let me put my critical thinking on and really reflect. And I'm not proud to say that my journey really began last year with all of the things that were happening, all the murders that were happening, all of the pain that was happening. And I'm not proud that that is what it took for me to start waking up. And as I was reflecting on this question, it was neat to see the similarities in my journey between learning about human trafficking, honestly, and learning about racism, white privilege, bias. That, like Shawnee noted earlier, it took getting close to see the issue, because I can't do anything about it in me if I don't see it. It took proximity. So it took last year the fact that it was hurting people in my circles, people that I cared about and loved. It wasn't any more out there in the world or in history. It was more, it's the people I rub shoulders with. It's my people. It's hurting my people. And so I had to look inward and say, okay, now that I see the problem, all right, what am I going to do about it, right? Just like trafficking. We say that thing, once you see it, you can't look away, right? And we get that. We understand. I get that. Let me call it out. White people, we get that in human trafficking. But I don't know that we get it with this topic. I did not. I'll say I did not get it with this topic, with this evil, with this issue. And so it took getting close. It took then starting the education process. And I think about in the human trafficking realm, I don't rely upon survivors, overcomers to teach me about human trafficking and that issue. I hear their stories. I want to elevate their voices. I want to empower those overcomers, and I want to step out of the way for them. But I don't rely upon them to teach me about that issue. And so why is that not the same when I turn to this issue to say, you know what? I can't rely upon people of color to teach me about this issue. I want to elevate their voices. I want to empower them. I want to move out the way. But I got to do my own work too at the same time. And so that was what really was part of this journey for me, of realizing that and just starting this. And it has been so transformative for me to sit in these meetings with you ladies as you are just talking and sharing your hearts about what you want to convey, and me just sitting back and just fire hose, just washing over me of wow, can we just do this every week? I just want to sit, I want to hear, I want to learn, I want to be part of this conversation. And so that has been transformative for me already. And I have been blessed to have, in our professional environment, we started a group of just starting to dive into some content and talk about these conversations. In my faith circles, we started looking into some things as well. And so those have been fostering, but it's like, it doesn't stop, this is just the beginning. And so I'm so excited, and I'm so honored to be on the stage. And when you guys asked me to facilitate, at first I was like, yes, amen, let's go. And then honestly, I had to step back and say, what is this that I'm entering into? And what if I get up on that stage and I say all the wrong things and I fail and I look ignorant? And then I kind of self-checked and I said, you know what? I'd rather look ignorant and say some wrong things and try to get it right than stay silent and perpetuate the problem with my silence. So I'm here. I'm honored to be here. I don't have it right. I want to get it right. I want to be continually in this conversation. And I'm just excited. I want to thank you ladies for really sparking this and bringing all of your perspectives and your understandings and your personal experiences to this conversation. And I'm just really excited to see where this goes. So thank you. Can we give it up for these ladies? They are incredible. And as we wrap up, I really think it's neat that these ladies didn't want to just have this night be about them speaking to you. They want to learn about you, learn from you as well. So if we can get the house lights or maybe dim these lights, because we want to see the faces in the crowd. And made questions that they want you to answer tonight. So we have a couple of mic passers. I think they're here. I honestly cannot even see anything out in the crowd right now. There they are. Nate's over there. And so we just got a couple of questions that we challenge some people in the audience to speak to. Because again, we're all part of this conversation. It's not just us to you or them to you, or we're all this together. So, we blasted out this invitation, and we honestly thought, maybe 20 people in a small room, right? Whoever shows up, all right, let's start this convo. Bam, like 125 people signed up to be here tonight, and we were blown away. So we want to hear, you who came, what brought you here? Why are you entering into this conversation? And what are you excited about? So Nate has the mic, and if you feel led and you would be brave enough to share just a little bit about what brought you here, we would love to hear that from you. And I will start calling out some people. I know some people in the room. There's one. I see somebody. If you just say your name to start off, that'd be awesome.
Start off by thank you, lady. Amazing. My name is Toya, so I was born to worker. It's in my heart, and that's definitely one thing I want to do. I want to elevate voices. I want to be a part of something like this. So thank you.
Give her a hand. Thank you. It's not easy to stand up in a room and share. Thank you. We're glad you're here.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rich Love Society. I am here because of Kathy McGibbons. She's amazing. I'm sure you already know. This is a very important topic for me because I am a teen sex trafficking survivor. I went through the foster care system, and I witnessed the differences in treatment versus me being a child of color, and other children that were other races. And I realized that girls that looked like me were treated as, we had pimps. I would hear things like, you knew what you were getting into. I was molested and raped in my school in first grade. And when I went to tell the teacher, she did nothing. So going through that throughout my whole life, not understanding, I didn't realize I was trafficked until I was over 30 years old. So this is a very important topic, and it makes my heart so full that there are so many people here that want to know more. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing. We're so glad you're here.
Hi there. I just want to thank everyone on the panel and everyone that is here. I think it's important that these conversations, as we all said, are very hard. And I'm always a fan of what I call courageous conversations that get us talking. And so this is one of these opportunities where we can have the conversations and talk about solutions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you for being here.
All right, I want to hear something that maybe surprised you, something that you learned, something that you will take away from as you leave this place tonight, whether it's from the film or from this conversation that we had. Maybe share something about that. Chloe Gallagher.
So my name's Chloe. I'm an advocate for the landing, and I remember interning and going out on my very first call, and I came from a very privileged neighborhood and lifestyle, and just going to these homes, and I was really thinking to myself wow, I really did have it all growing up, and I didn't even know this is how teenagers lived and how people's houses could actually look like. And I think it really changed me in that that's what I'm taking back from this, because you really don't understand what you have until you see others that don't have it. So that's just what I'm really taking from this.
Thanks, Chloe. Thanks for sharing.
Hi, everyone. My name is Demi. I'm with Harvest House in Beaumont. I am a former advocate, now program director. So y'all pray for me. Don't know what I'm doing yet. But I think I'm going to take away the part about like everything's our lane, because trafficking has always been an issue on my heart that I was willing to, give everything up for and go fight that issue. And you're so right. We think like, okay, I'm going to learn all I can about this so I can help people with this. And it's like that it doesn't just stop there. It does parallel these things. And you see that when you work with your clients. You're like, you're right. You're not just dealing with that. You're dealing with this and this. And so making everything my lane, I'm like, y'all better watch out, because like we're going to conquer more than just this issue when we work with our clients. So that's what I'm taking back from this.
That's good.
Love it.
So good. All right, to wrap up, we just want to make a space for any questions from the room that maybe weren't addressed tonight that you have that you'd love to hear someone address tonight before we leave. Adam.
Hey, I appreciate each and every one of you on the stage, and I came here tonight because I'm a fan of all of you, and so thank you very much. I've asked a few of you this question directly previously, but I want to keep asking the question: how do we continue to elevate voices of color, specifically the voices of women of color in the anti-trafficking space, not just here in Houston, which we're obviously, I think, all very invested in, but statewide, nationally, and globally? How do we continue to do this work in elevating not just your voices, but the voices of many?
No, it's good to see you, Adam. You know how much I love and respect you, and thank you so much for asking that question. You're such a dear man, and you really love us and have a heart for this conversation, so know that you love and appreciate it. I think, and this is what I was thinking as far as like a call to action, I know we're going to be talking about that as well, but something that sits with me and resonates with me as someone who has been a woman of color my whole life and who has been in the anti-human trafficking movement since 2015. And so when I stepped into the space, and I tell this story all the time about when I stepped into the space and I looked around the room at all the meetings I was going to, at all the groups and all the task force and things like that, and I asked the question, why am I the only African-American woman in the room? Like, what is really going on in the world? Because I had worked in all other facets of the nonprofit arena, homelessness, domestic violence, gangs. I had done all that work, and I'd always seen diversity in the room. And so when I began to do this work in 2015, and why I still do it today, is I'm still trying to answer that question. Why is that the reality? So to answer Adam's question about how we elevate people of color in the movement, you have to be able to click on an anti-trafficking organization's website first and foremost and see people of color on staff, period. That's how you begin to elevate the conversation. You have to have people at the board level of these anti-human trafficking organizations that represent people of color, okay? That's where you have to start, and that's what you can control. You can choose to have diversity on your staff, and not just ethnic diversity, LGBTQ folks, individuals who identify as transgendered. You can make those choices to have those individuals on your staff and at your board level. So, and my call to action, and what I would like to see elevated, is that we continue to not just talk about diversifying the movement, but be about it. Actively do something to change the narrative as it relates to people of color. Inclusion and true inclusion. I don't want to walk into this right here. For me, has been very healing because I no longer felt alone, full transparency. As African American women, we are not a monolith. We do not all think the same. We do not have all the same beliefs. However, when we walk into the room, we're walking in as women of color and African American women, and people just respond accordingly. That is the world that we live in. I've told the story time and time again, and I'll pass the mic in a minute, about when I have been in events. I'm the ED, now CEO, because we changed the titles, of the organization, and I can't tell you how many times people are surprised to hear that. Make assumptions that maybe I'm a frontline worker, maybe I'm the case manager, and when I tell them who I am, what I represent, there are visceral responses to that. This is unacceptable. So I would just challenge those who are really connected and have an opportunity to make change in the anti-human trafficking movement to do that work and do it quickly. Because there was a lot of talk after George Floyd was murdered about change that needed to happen. We're almost at the 1-year anniversary of his death. What change has really happened? And I would just ask that you look at self and not outside of yourself to activate that change. I'm passing the mic.
I think you said true inclusion, and I love that, right? Because it's one step further than just diversifying and throwing some stock photos on your websites, right? It's actually like really including. I have the same conversations about including overcomers, right? Because a lot of times when people have a question about trafficking, it's like, well, let's just call up an overcomer. And then it's like, hey, what do you think? Okay, bye. And then we never hear from them again. But like true inclusion. So, and this happened, and I'm going to be bold and just say it, sorry. But like, we got called after the crazy summer last year. A lot of us got called on to do stuff and participate and speak on certain things. And literally, as soon as the emotions kind of just died, there was no follow-up. So it was like, hey, this has to do with Black people. Let's call the Black people in the space and figure out what they want, what we should do, and then not really include them. True inclusion means accepting them, like you just said beautifully, like including them in leadership roles. That means like, no, I honor you, like I love that word. Like I honor you and I want to learn from you, so I need you a part of my team, just like we need you a part of our team, right? So I think moving to true inclusion.
Yeah. What I was hearing from both of y'all was that it's valued, right? Like, not only am I doing it to check the box, to say that we are diversified, to look good on our website, but no, I really value this. And I really want this voice here. And I think that's maybe what we saw maybe a year ago. People were excited or emotional. But do I really care about this? Do I really think this is important? And I think that's what I just heard from you guys.
Mike, I agree that being heard, being honored, and allowing space for those individuals to share their voices. I really don't know, very vulnerable right now. I really don't know how people who are of non-color may have experienced George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery. Thank you. I'm a wife. I'm a mother of 3 children. I have 3 children. Well, at that time, they're not all under 18, but 2 at home under 18. And I have 1 son. I have only 1 son. And my son is 6'6". I'm 6'1½", so I'm a tall woman. Tonight, I'm probably 6'4". I have on heels. And lest I digress. Let me get focus, Cam. And Jonathan is my son, my only son. He's 6'6". He was 15 at the time, and he's a runner. We live in the suburbs, and he runs in the morning sometimes, and I actually run in the morning sometimes. But I wish I could give you for a moment the fear. I mean, the sheer terror that I have every day he goes out to run. I wish for just a moment you could feel it so you could possibly understand the perspective. So when someone after that asks you to come and speak about racism at an event, and it has to be the clean version so everybody feels good in the room, like I don't want to say too much, but I feel like we're friends, right, tonight, and I can share this. There is a group of people of color in America that live in sheer fear every time their child walks out the door. Like, literally. I live in a pretty decent neighborhood, I think. And the schools are all in my neighborhood. And we live less than a mile away from the school because the schools are all there. I can't let my son walk home after school. I literally can't. Because I don't know that he's going to make it home. That fear is so real. I wish and I pray that God helps deliver me from that, that I'll be able to release him in that way. He's turned 16, so I got 2 more years before he goes to college. Will I be able to drop him off at a college campus? I pray so. But the type of fear that I am talking about, many of the mothers in the room who are mothers of African American males will know that. And then I'm a female and I run in the morning, so I'm an African American female and an athlete, so I run in the morning, and sometimes I don't make it to run until it gets dark outside. What I have to worry about, one, as a woman running, right, to just do self-help, self-care, but then to be an African American woman running at night just carries a different level with it. So I'm not saying this to burden you with it per se, but just to give you an honor that when you ask me to come and speak about racism, I'm coming from a total different point of view. It's not pretty, it's not clean, nor is it, you know, what you want it to be for you to feel safe. It feels differently for me. And so any of the trafficking victims that you see at your organizations or you come in contact with, multiply my fear times 10. That's what I can only imagine, because they're having to see it every day, all day, from a whole different point of view of safety. So be sensitive and honor that in your conversations with your friends that are people of color, but then also with the people that you're serving. Honor that space for us and know that that's where we are, and be compassionate enough to care about that. That would be my thing. So thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Yeah, we got real live tears. And when I tell you that we're inviting you into our space, this is what we've been going through. So how is it relevant to trafficking? I thought I was coming here to learn about girls and justice and trafficking, because we're serving that population, right? After, you know, what Kim just expressed, and you have to evaluate yourselves. Don't answer now, but just do a self-check and an agency check if you work for nonprofits and agencies. Did you check on the victims and the survivors of color that are in your organizations? Did you check on your coworkers? Did you make a statement? And I know a lot of people, I know it's controversial, right? It's like, we can't make statements because we can't jump on every bandwagon. But if you're serving people of color, 40% of the people that you're serving are African Americans. Did you honor that? Did you check on them, right? So that's why that's relevant, and that's why we're just coming from a really open and vulnerable space. We can be here all night, but we're not going to, because we got to go home. But I definitely, again, I just want to thank everyone for coming. Thank you for engaging in this conversation with us. This is the first of many, for sure. And Tamika, you did such a lovely job at a call to action. I don't know what else to add after that. That is literally it. But I will talk about, you know, Zeffie and Shauna Broussard. Zeffie Trevino, I think you saw the slide. 16 years old at the time, charged for a murder that her trafficker confessed to and committed, right? So why? And she's a brown girl. She's a girl of color. Shauna Broussard, same thing. Her story is just now picking up traction. She just started sharing it. Charged, she's in Louisiana, charged with principal murder for a crime that her abuser committed. How are our girls getting caught up in this? What are we missing? We're missing something. And we can't just say, oh, that's just a story. Well, they're not in my program, so it doesn't matter to me. No, it does. It does. It directly impacts us because that could be any one of the people that we're serving. So my call to action would be to dive deeper into those stories. I think we can put it back up on here, their names. Dive deeper into those stories. They have their own calls to action. So if you follow them on social media, if you follow their websites, they will tell you strategically, like they have everything laid out. Like, this is what I need. I need an attorney. For Shauna specifically, she needs an attorney. She needs people to advocate on her behalf. Go to Louisiana. If you have influence. We all have some kind of influence. Go to Louisiana and go to bat for that girl. She needs people. She needs people, and she's doing it like by herself right now. This is the movement that we're in. This is the calling that we've chosen. So we have to stand up and act. So that would be my nugget of call to action, in addition to that long sermon that Tamika just did, because it was awesome. It was awesome. But I definitely, guys, thank you so much for coming. We honor you. We love you. We're proud, and we're honored to be doing this work with you. So yeah, just give yourselves a hand.
And my call to action would be come to the next event that we have. Keep this conversation going. And we just wish you guys a great night. And thank you really for coming. Yeah.
Yeah, we love you very much. We love you very much for your willingness to be here.